Hey gang, it's your buddy Platt back here with another installment of my Kirkland Brand Series. I recently got a membership at Costco and was so impressed with their selection of alcoholic beverages, I thought I would do a video series over it. And I think today is a good example of what I'm kind of talking about here. I pointed out in the first video that Costco is the #1 retailer of wine in the world. They sell just an incredible amount of wine. And it was one of the things I've read about them before I got the membership, that they had done a really good job of procuring some great wines for their private label. Again, there's stores out there, grocery store chains, what have you, that have private label brands, but they're just looking for just the lowest cost possible. Costco has really done what they can to, get some decent quality for the price. And I think today might be a good example of that. We have Kirkland's signature brand, Cotes Du Rhone Villages, Appellation Cotes Du Rhone Villages Contrôlé. We'll get into what that means in a little bit. This is a 2024, so it's a fairly young wine. 750 milliliter bottle, 15% alcohol by volume, and I purchased this for $7.49. So just think about red wine you could purchase in that price range. We have French wine. Now, what is the Appellation Contrôlé they're referring to here? More specifically, it's known as AOC, Appellation Original Contrôlé. And pardon my bad French, but I've only taken 1 or 2 wine classes, so the French is not up to snuff. But anyway, that is the system they use in France to label wines. Kind of give you a compare contrast with here in the U.S. Most wine that you'll buy, let's say from Napa, Sonoma, whatever, will say Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Merlot, and that is the predominant grape in that bottle. Here in the U.S., it has to be at least 75% of that grape. So if you buy a Cabernet, it's at least 75% Cabernet, a lot of times even more than that. And that's all you really know. You know the grape, and then hopefully maybe you know the winemaker themselves, but that's all you really know, and that's all, in a certain sense, what most people want. The French are a little different. They label, they imply quality with that. Here in the U.S., the TTB, which regulates alcohol in the U.S., they're just worried that if you say it's Cabernet, it's at least 75% Cabernet. If you say it's a 750 milliliter bottle, there's 750 milliliter in there. And if you say it's 15% alcohol by volume, it needs, and that's all they're worried about. But in France, they do imply a level of quality in this designation. The AOC designation is actually the top designation for wine. They have other designations. A term that you'll hear a lot of times in Europe is table wines. That is basically their version of 2-buck chuck, and they'll label it as table wine. Here in the U.S., your Mogan Davids and the world and stuff like that would get labeled as table wines. But the higher end stuff is AOCs. And to qualify as an AOC, you have to follow their guidelines. A lot of times you have to grow it in a certain region, you have to use certain grapes or certain regulation, irrigation, what have you. And if the grower follows all that, they can then potentially get that designation, the AOC designation, which generally adds a little price to that. That's, a lot of people will ask, is French wine worth it? That depends on you. Is it better than California wines? Again, that's kind of up to you. But the French can at least say, look, we have this kind of quality control here, and we have these designations, we have these rules, and we're the French, we've been doing this forever. So that kind of gets implied into that. Also, French wine, again, here in the U.S., if you like Cab, we have a Cab, and maybe you know our stuff and like our stuff, Cab. They're not just selling the grape, they're selling what's called terroir, the growing region, the environment. You can supposedly taste the soil, you can taste the environment, the air. Also, you'll know, do they have late falls or early springs or hot summer days that might extract these flavors out of the grapes. That's kind of the story they're putting behind it in some of these designations or whatever. And that's why sommeliers, actually, it's a lot of work to be a sommelier and to pass that exam. I've done the prep work. You have to know, if you're going to deal with high-end French and Italian and a lot of wines, you have to know these growing regions, because the bottle won't tell you what's in there. Speaking of which, what is in this bottle? Let's talk about that blend. For the Cotes Du Rhone Village's designation for their reds, usually growing regions will have designations for reds, whites, and rosés, and the grapes that go in those blends will be different. Here, at least 50% of the juice in here has to come from Grenache Noir grapes. Another 20% can be made up with a combination of Syrah and Mourvedre. Hopefully I said that right. Again, my French is not great. And between the three, it has to make up at least 80% of the blend. The other 20% can be other grapes that are allowed. There's about 5 or 6 other grapes that get allowed. Again, to use an example here in the U.S., Cabernet, it has to be 75% of that in the bottle. But the rest could be Merlot, Pinot Noir, what have you. Here in the U.S., that secondary grape's not necessarily regulated. Or we see here in France, they're talking about how much of the secondary grape you can use, how much of the other grapes you can use. It's a lot more controlled. But that's what is in this particular bottle. That being said, let's try some French wine. All right, a nice dark maroon. All right, I get plenty of fruit on the nose. Fruit, but not overly sweet. It's not as sugary, but it is fruity, jammy a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and dive on in. All right, that's nice. When I heard Grenache Noir, I naturally think Pinot Noir. Not quite that fruity, not to me as sweet, but in that direction. To me, this has a little more tannins than a Pinot Noir. You know what, now to think about it, maybe that Syrah is coming in. Syrah's a little bit bolder, a little less fruity, more of those tannins. Maybe it's that Syrah blend in there. Very nice wine. Kind of, even though it's a young wine, to me, and I must say, I'm not a wine guy, even though the older I get, the more I do appreciate wine. To me, this is a slightly more mature wine. It's not a straight sweeter red, but it does drink easy. It doesn't bust you with tannins. 15%, I noticed the alcohol going down, but it's not big. This to me was something I could see eating with like a pork dish. I think it could work with some meat dishes, not necessarily big meat dish, but I see it, some beef, some pork, dishes like that. I don't know if this is for lighter dishes though, but really nice wine. And again, $7.49 for actual real French wine. I think that's a pretty good deal. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please subscribe down below. Also, please like the video because it lets YouTube know we're putting out good content. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or things from the Kirkland line that you would like me to try, please leave them in the comment section, or you can always contact me on the Twitter page. Until next time, bottoms up.